Every year, as Halloween night approaches, streets become filled with faces hidden behind masks, costumes that blur the line between reality and nightmare, and disguises that allow the living to walk unnoticed among the dead. But beneath the playful tradition of dressing up lies a history that is far darker than most people realize. For centuries, certain masks and costumes were not symbols of fun, but objects of fear, banned, outlawed, or whispered about as cursed. Behind the painted smiles and stitched fabric lurk stories of panic, superstition, and rituals that authorities tried desperately to control. Tonight, we are going to peel away the innocent surface of Halloween and descend into its forbidden wardrobe, the banned masks and costumes that were never meant to be worn. Before we begin, I want you to remember this. The mask you put on for Halloween might not just be a disguise. It might be an echo of something much older, a shadow of something that once terrified entire communities. As we uncover these stories, keep watching closely, because some masks were not made to hide the living, but to attract the dead. If you are brave enough to face these secrets, stay until the end. And don't forget to subscribe. Share this with someone who loves the dark truth behind traditions, and leave a comment telling us which mask you would never dare to wear. To understand why certain masks and costumes were banned, we need to go back to the origins of Halloween itself. Long before the holiday was about candy and parties, it was about fear, survival, and the thin boundary between this world and the next. The ancient Celts celebrated Samhain, the festival marking the end of harvest and the arrival of the dark half of the year. On this night, they believed the veil between the living and the dead was dangerously thin. Spirits, both kind and malevolent, could cross into the world of humans. People wore disguises, animal skins, monstrous faces carved into wood or bone, not to celebrate, but to hide. They hoped the spirits wandering the earth would mistake them for one of their own and pass them by. But not every disguise was harmless. Some were feared even among the Celts, considered too close to invoking the dead, too inviting to forces that no human should welcome. Priests, the Druids, warned that certain masks could open doors instead of closing them, and those masks were forbidden. As the centuries passed, the Church sought to suppress these pagan practices. By the Middle Ages, wearing masks and costumes during All Hallows' Eve was seen by many church leaders as dangerous, even heretical. Imagine a medieval village, small, dark, lit only by torches and the cold glow of the moon. On Halloween night, villagers might cover their faces with crude masks, fashioned from animal skulls or stitched cloth, to confuse the spirits. But priests and bishops condemned the practice, claiming that masks could invite demons or allow witches to walk unseen among the people. In some towns, edicts were issued: no masks, no disguises, no costumes that might conceal the face. To disobey was to risk punishment, not only by the church, but by fearful neighbors who believed a masked person might be a witch in disguise. One of the earliest recorded bans on Halloween costumes comes from the 14th century in parts of France and Germany, where laws forbade peasants from dressing as the dead during All Saints and All Souls festivals. The reason was not simply moral, it was fear. Authorities believed that when a living person dressed as a corpse or a spirit, it blurred the line between life and death too much. They feared it might trick the souls of the departed into returning, unable to tell who was alive and who was not. In some towns, those caught wearing skeletal masks were punished with public humiliation or even imprisonment. The mask of death was not to be mocked, they warned, for death itself might answer. Across medieval Europe, masks of animals were also sometimes banned. Wolves, goats, and cats were considered symbols of the devil, and disguising oneself in such forms was equated with devil worship. During the witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries, people accused of wearing animal masks on Halloween were sometimes accused of practicing witchcraft. There are records of villagers who were interrogated, beaten, or executed simply because they wore the wrong mask at the wrong time of year. But not all bans were driven by the church. Some were driven by fear of chaos. Halloween, even in medieval times, was a night of mischief. People in masks were harder to recognize, and under the cover of disguise, crimes could be committed. Robberies, assaults, even murders could be carried out by those who hid behind masks. In England during the late Middle Ages, there were specific laws against masking on All Hallows' Eve. Anyone caught hiding their face could be fined or worse, because it was believed that masks gave not only anonymity, but also a dangerous sense of freedom. Some chroniclers claimed that masked men and women danced with spirits, performed rituals in graveyards, or even drank blood in secret ceremonies. Whether true or not, the fear was enough to justify the bans. As European settlers carried their traditions to the New World, the fear of masks followed. In colonial America, especially in Puritan communities, Halloween itself was seen as sinful, a remnant of pagan superstition. Costumes and disguises were outright forbidden. The Puritans believed masks were tools of the devil, allowing his servants to walk unseen. In Salem, where witch trials spread paranoia, even a child wearing a crude disguise could be accused of witchcraft. Masks became associated with secrecy, rebellion, and evil. And so for decades, in parts of New England, Halloween passed with no disguises at all, the tradition banned by fear of hellfire. But the bans were not always about religion or spirits. Sometimes, they were about control. Authorities feared the power of the mask. When you cover your face, you shed your identity, your social rank, your obligations. A poor man could become a king, a servant could become a monster, a child could become a ghost. In societies built on strict order, masks represented danger. They allowed rebellion to flourish under anonymity. And so, time and again, rulers, priests, and officials banned them, hoping to keep order when the night grew dark and unpredictable. And yet, despite every attempt to control them, masks endured. Because deep down, people knew something powerful lay behind them. They were more than cloth or bone or paint. They were symbols, invitations, doors. The church said they attracted demons. Villagers whispered that some masks had been cursed, carrying the spirits of the dead within them. Even today, stories persist of costumes and masks that should never have been worn, masks that carried too much of the past, too much of the darkness. So, as you think about the masks that have been banned through history, the skeletal faces of death, the animal disguises of witches, the costumes outlawed in medieval villages, ask yourself, what is it about hiding the human face that terrifies those in power? Is it because masks make us less human, or more? And remember, this is only the beginning. Because the history of banned masks and costumes doesn't end in the Middle Ages. It stretches into the modern era, into laws passed in the 19th and 20th centuries, into real stories of costumes that brought tragedy instead of laughter, and into legends of cursed disguises that still haunt us today. As the centuries turned, the fear of masks did not vanish. It only transformed, taking new forms as society itself changed. The 19th century brought industrial cities, bustling streets, and a world moving faster than ever before. Halloween, once a quiet night of ancient rituals and village mischief, evolved into a public spectacle. Parades, parties, and street celebrations became common, but so did regulations. Authorities, wary of chaos, began to write laws specifically targeting masks and costumes. In places like New York, Boston, and Chicago, ordinances were passed forbidding the wearing of full-face masks in public without a permit. The rationale was simple, yet chilling. Anonymity breeds lawlessness. Under the cover of a mask, one could steal, fight, or commit acts too terrifying to imagine. Children and adults alike were caught in the tension between tradition and control, between the thrill of disguise and the dread of what lurked behind it. These laws did not merely aim to prevent mischief. They were rooted in a deep psychological fear. A masked person is unpredictable. The human face, that mirror of emotion, is hidden, replaced by something crafted, something alien. In the late 1800s, reports surfaced of masked figures frightening entire neighborhoods. One account from a small town in Pennsylvania described a night when dozens of children, wearing grotesque masks and animal costumes, paralyzed families with fear. Mothers locked their doors, fathers armed themselves, and local constables patrolled the streets, unsure if they were facing pranksters or something far worse. The masks themselves were blamed, said to carry an almost supernatural ability to terrify, to strip away the natural order, to invite darkness into the streets. Meanwhile, Europe had its own stories of masked terror. In the industrial districts of London and Paris, masquerades and Halloween-like festivities were popular among the working class, but not without danger. Police records from the late 19th century mention arrests of men and women wearing full-face masks during Carnival or All Hallows Eve, accused of disturbing the peace or impersonating spirits. One particularly famous incident involved a masked figure wandering the foggy streets of London, leaving witnesses convinced they had glimpsed a ghost. The panic that followed forced the city to enact stricter regulations, banning masks that obscured the entire face. The fascination with masks, however, only grew. People whispered of certain masks that carried curses, worn by those who vanished mysteriously, or brought misfortune to those who dared to wear them. In the United States, the 20th century continued this uneasy relationship with Halloween costumes. Early 1900s, America saw a surge in Halloween celebrations, but also in accidents, vandalism, and injuries. Town councils began to regulate not only masks, but also full costumes, especially those that could conceal identity. One notorious case from 1925 involved a ghost costume made of heavy, stiff fabric that accidentally caught fire during a street performance, leaving a child permanently scarred. Stories like these spread fear, and soon newspapers were filled with warnings. "Beware the costume that hides your face," they cautioned. In some towns, the simple act of wearing a mask on Halloween could lead to a summons, a fine, or worse, if the wearer caused alarm. The mask had become not merely a piece of cloth or plastic, but a symbol of danger, capable of inciting both chaos and superstition. And then there are the masks that gained a reputation far beyond law or logic. Those whispered about in hushed tones as cursed, forbidden, or haunted. One legend speaks of a porcelain mask from the 1930s, crafted in France, delicate and beautiful. It was said that whoever wore it during Halloween would hear whispers in the night, shadows would stretch toward them, and misfortune would shadow their steps for an entire year. In another case, a wooden animal mask, carved in rural Germany during the 19th century, was said to have been used in rituals invoking spirits. Any child who wore it, according to local lore, would wake screaming, claiming they had seen the other side. These stories, whether true or merely rumor, solidified the idea that some masks were not meant for the living, that certain costumes carried the weight of history, superstition, and dark intent. The psychology behind this fear is as fascinating as it is terrifying. Humans rely on facial recognition to communicate, to trust, to understand intention. Hide that face, and the mind struggles. What is behind the mask? Friend or foe? Human or something else? The brain fills in gaps with imagination, often with something far darker than reality. This is why even today, certain masks, realistic skulls, animal faces, or eerily lifelike dolls can provoke immediate unease, a primal fear that harks back to centuries of caution and superstition. Halloween masks tap into that deep evolutionary terror, the instinct that warns us when the unknown is near. Real-life incidents continue to reinforce these fears. In the 1970s, a small town in Canada reported a series of Halloween-related accidents involving costumes that restricted vision or movement. In one case, a young teenager wearing a full-body wolf costume fell into a canal, narrowly escaping death. In another, a group of children wearing masks with small eye holes caused a stampede in a crowded street. Newspapers sensationalized these events, claiming that some costumes are too dangerous to wear. In modern times, though regulations are more about safety than superstition, the echoes of centuries-old fear remain. Masks still fascinate and terrify, a duality that no law can fully contain. Urban legends have kept the mythos alive. Stories circulate of Masks that drive wearers to madness, of costumes that appear in dreams before manifesting in reality, and of accessories that cannot be removed once worn. One American tale tells of a mask found in an abandoned attic, carved with a grotesque smile. Every Halloween, children who stumbled upon it were said to vanish, leaving only whispers behind. In Mexico, folklore warns of certain calavera, skull masks that must never be worn, lest the spirits of the dead claim the living as one of their own. These legends, whether believed or not, add a layer of thrill, cementing the mask's place as a vessel for fear, history, and imagination. And so we come full circle. From the Druids of ancient Celtic lands to Puritan villages in colonial America, from medieval edicts in Europe to 20th century municipal laws, the mask has been both tool and terror. Some were banned for morality, some for safety, some for reasons lost to time, yet all share a common thread. The human face is sacred, and to hide it is to flirt with the unknown. Some masks invite mischief, others invite calamity, and a few, whispered about in the dark corners of history, invite something far beyond human comprehension. As Halloween approaches, consider this. Every mask you see, every costume you try on, carries echoes of centuries-old fear. A skeletal grin, a twisted animal face, a porcelain smile. They are more than decoration. They are warnings, remnants of a past where the wrong disguise could cost you everything. And if you think you can wear one of these masks without consequence, remember the stories, the cursed masks, the haunted costumes, the children who disappeared, the towns that panicked. Halloween is fun, yes, but it is also a night that bridges worlds, where the line between the living and the dead can blur with the turn of a mask. So as you prepare your costume, choose wisely. Behind the fabric and paint, history watches. The bands, the tragedies, the legends, they are all reminders. Some disguises were never meant to be worn, and those who dare to ignore the warnings may discover that the mask is not just hiding them, but hiding something far older, far darker, and far more terrifying. If you've survived this journey into forbidden masks and haunted costumes, don't stop here. Share this video, leave a comment about the costume that scares you the most, and subscribe to face even darker truths in the shadows of tradition. Because in the world of Halloween, some doors should never be opened and some masks should never be lifted.